Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, September 18th, 2023 Board of Education regular meeting. I'm calling the meeting to order at 7 p.m. this evening. Mrs. Hageman, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sebastian.
Here.
Mr. Elam.
Here.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Here.
Mrs. Donahue. Here. Mr. King.
Here.
Please stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next I will ask if there are any additions to the agenda before I call for the approval. Are there any additions? Okay, may I have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting? Thank you, Mr. Elam. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Mansfield. Any discussion? Mrs. Hageman, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Elam.
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian.
Yes. Next up is approval of minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the
Oh.
minutes.
We'll amend it, Natalie, if there's changes. I'll take that motion, Mr. King. Is there a second? Is there a second to approve? Okay, thank you, Mrs. Mansfield. Okay, discussion. Go ahead, Natalie.
Sorry, Leila and I were absent from the August 21st. So we won't be able to approve those agenda minutes.
I've listened to the recording. I can agree.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so you can abstain if you so desire. So I guess my question, do you want me to separate those into separate items, Mrs. Donahue?
It's fine. You
Okay.
can-
All right, thank you. All right, is there any other discussion on the minutes? All right, Mrs. Hageman, will you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Sebastian.
Yes.
Mr. Elam.
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue.
Abstain.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 4-0, I guess, with an abstention. All right, public participation is up next. I have one public participation, Julie Reese.
Okay, so here's my questions and comments for this evening's festivities. Why did the new classified personnel number jump 5 from 14 to 19? What does NP stand for after a new hire name? There's a bunch of them that had the letters NP out of the right. It used to have all these, I don't know if that's related to background checks because it didn't say that formally. Assistant Transportation Supervisor has a date typo. It should be December 2022. It says 2023. So that's just a little typo. So this is my big one tonight. I'm pretty appalled at the changes to the classified jobs whose names were swapped. Once again, this is not about the people who hold these positions, just about the process and consistency, and in this case, possibly ethics. We had an assistant maintenance and grounds, and then so these are the two old ones. They were called assistant maintenance and grounds. And then there was a maintenance and grounds, which was really no longer in use. That's the one that didn't get removed when the maintenance supervisor became an administrative role. 3 months ago, the assistant was promoted to the defunct maintenance and grounds position, which represented roughly a 35% salary increase. So here we are now, just a few months later, renaming maintenance grounds back to assistant. So he went from assistant to maintenance and grounds, and now it's going back to assistant, and renaming the old assistant position to just plain building and grounds. Neither job title has maintenance in it, even though these are assistants and employees beneath the maintenance supervisor. So the bottom line is the assistant position just got a 35% raise, even though the duties remain basically the same. I'm not against the salary increases, but you guys know that 35% is beyond the pale for me. Worse though is the process of swapping the names. It's like it was done to, in effect, have a big raise there. So once again, I mean, this erodes my trust in administration. I've lost confidence that the step table is being applied consistently and equitably, and it could be an ORC violation as well. I'm also concerned that things seem to be a bit of a mess. Based on the past few agendas, I have trouble following all of the new hires, renewals, additional positions, resignations, contracts rescinded, which I've never seen before, step changes, salary advancements, et cetera, again, does not inspire confidence. And then my last question is, there were salary changes for the ELSS aides, but I thought we just recently hired them. So I just wondered what that was. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Reese. Next up is the treasurer's report. Mrs. Hagan.
So for the month of August, just sort of wanted to show just a little bit of where we're at. ODE funding is up 30% or roughly 329,000. Real estate taxes have increased by 15% over what we collected this time last year. The Huber TIF came in about 21% over what we got last year. If you remember last year, I was really concerned that we weren't collecting what I thought we should be collecting. This year, it looks more like I expected, but it did catch up, of course, at the end of the year. Our interest is up 17% from last year. We did get rollback in homestead money early. It says 100% increase. Yes, because we didn't get it last year until September. So this year we got it in August, which is always good. And then income taxes pretty much remain the same, but our revenues are up about 30%. So expense snapshot, where we're at, of course, salaries and then benefits, purchase service supplies. We aren't making very many equipment purchases right now, but we've decreased by 11%, but that's only because we're starting out. First, in August, we only had one new contract pay for most of our staff, which was August 25th. Benefits have gone up about 7% because that's prepaid. So we're paying September premiums in August. So we're going to see that additional staff come on earlier in the benefit section. All other items combined, all expenses have gone down about 26%. But we have new staff, we're working on things, and I'm expecting that to change in September. And we have seen an increase in health services or nursing services for students. Current cash at the end of August was $7,860,000, and that's 144 days cash on hand. As far as construction account, right now we're sitting at 760 at the end of August, 766,000 in revenue. Expenses over fiscal year 23 and 24 is almost 24 million. Encumbrances is a negative 248 because we had some contracts that came in excessively less than we thought they were going to be, and we had to reduce some of our encumbrances, which is a good thing. So right now we're sitting at 3.5 in cash in the capital projects or construction accounts. So that's good for us as we move forward. Any questions, concerns? The bank rec, we did balance, so it's pretty simple. It's always a good day when we can balance. And then as far as the general fund report, just a different way of looking at the data that was in the spreadsheet, the presentation for the board. Investments, we're doing well on our investments and our interest is up. We're over 2%. Who would have thought we would have been so happy to be over 2% on investments, but we are. So looks good so far. A detailed check register, of course, for the month of August. Certificate of available resources or our revenue estimates need to be given to the auditor, Miami County auditor, get my auditors right, by the end of September. So I need your approval on that. And it's our revenue estimates. And then permanent appropriations. I love that they call them permanent because we all know I'm probably gonna change them at least 2, 3, 4 times a year, maybe more, once a month. It depends on what's going on in the district. But we have to have what's called a permanent appropriations filed with the Miami County Auditor by the end of September. So I need your approval on that as well. And these are on all of our accounts. You did approve temporary, and these are our permanents. The AppCom report, just a refresher, this just shows that we're not over appropriated in any of our funds, shows all of our initial cash, what our revenue expectations are, what our expenditures or budgets are planned to be, and then hopefully we end in a positive number all the way through, or at least break even. So that's what this is the report I use to make sure that we're not over or under appropriated in any of our accounts and freely review. Now, I did have to take this off, which is good news. We had a certificate of availability that needed approved because we had 2 invoices that were dated before the PO. The PO was dated July 1st, and then the invoices were dated in June. But Mr. Smith realized that that was an error on the part of the vendor, and he got us new invoices, so we don't need your approval. They invoiced us, but yeah, they should have invoiced us in August and something, I don't know. He said it's an error. I will take it and we'll fix it for him. That's all I have.
So do we need to remove E or no?
I have it stricken,
Okay.
so here in green, but yeah.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda for treasurer's items, which would be items A through D?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Mansfield. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. Discussion?
It looks like, financially, things are looking really good, which is nice to see. It's really nice to see that some of our strategies are starting to pay off with the investment of our funding we had for the new school and the stadium build. I think, it just goes to show that it's some good foresight in what we're going to do. And the fact that, only school district in Ohio that didn't have to ask the community for money to build a building or a stadium. And the fact that we're getting returns on the money, they'll pay for the money, all in all. So it's a win-win significantly for us. So I thought, just mentioning how great that is. It was a good job by the team.
And I'll also mention, because I've mentioned this a few times before, but with construction costs escalating the last 2 years, another local district had to go back to voters to finish their stadium. It was a 1 point something, the levy, it did pass, but we're very grateful. We were not only able to finish the stadium, but also finish the 5th grade wing. And I want to shout out to not just our administration and board, but our construction company, Peterson Construction, and our architect, Martin Miller. Without that team, I don't believe that would have happened. So again, it's a huge accomplishment. And if you've paid attention to other districts, it's unprecedented. I don't know anyone else who has built a building, like Jacob said, of this size without going back to voters. So congratulations to all. All right. Any other discussion? All right, Mrs. Hageman, will you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Sebastian,
Yes.
Mr. Elam,
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the superintendent's report. Mr. Crispin.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, everyone. Under Superintendent's Report, item A, important dates. This is a busy week. It's homecoming week. And so rather than inundate everybody with all the dates, just call everyone's attention to our website where we have a plethora of activities, spirit days, and culminating with the homecoming game this Friday against Sidney Lehman. Playing a Catholic. Back in the day, it used to be. Yeah. Dating myself. And then, of course, the dance Saturday. Take this opportunity to just make some comments about other important dates that have passed. One being the opening of the elementary, very exciting time in the district and for our teachers our staff. Appreciate, can't say enough for all their hard work in unpacking and preparation, and still working the kinks out about how to move and through the building and do cafeteria split up, and those are good problems to have, but still dismissing is quite an adventure. I was over there today and was in the midst of it, and tears, laughter, hands where they're not supposed to be, and our folks are awesome. All hands on deck, and everybody got out of the building in the car and bus of where they were supposed to go. So kudos to those folks. Really turned out the staggered. I want to thank the board again for allowing the staggered start, and it was greatly needed for the final move in and unpacking, as well as dyslexia training. A bonus was we heard from our drivers how nice it was to get used to their middle school, high school routes before, kind of working those kinks out before having to pick up the elementary kids, because that's a pretty tight turnaround in the morning and in the afternoon. So that was a bonus as well. Traffic is, we're still wrestling with traffic, mostly at the elementary, just really a sheer numbers. We think we've tweaked it about as much as we can. That's it for now. But our middle school, high school staff's done a great job. Our parents have done a super job, bus drivers in the new traffic flow, and we're getting kids to first period on time, which rarely happened last year. So we're very pleased with that. And then Friday was the opening of the new stadium, and it was great. Well, it was actually all week, and we had 3 victories, which was awesome. Great way to open up the stadium, but a great turnout Friday night, and the end zone for the dedication ceremony. And thanks to Damon Smith for organizing the event, and for everybody that had played a part in it. It's a great source of pride for our students and the community. On to personnel. So we did have an increase of classified vacancies, and 2 of them will be rescinding contracts because they took positions in other school districts after we had already approved them. So we did have some resignations. We did have to add 2 classroom aides, one for accommodating special needs student, and the others accommodate our large study hall, which is something we're going to have to really look at when we get into scheduling, because we have too many kids in study hall right now. So, but we need extra help monitoring those kids. Miss Lawson was going to say, "See you later." So that's really the increase for our classified folks. Enrollment, the other piece is, we're up 88 kids from where we finished last year. And so we're growing in different places, but nevertheless, it's a little below our average, which had been about 94, I believe, before we ran into last year. But we're over 2,000 students at Bethel local schools. So that is the superintendent's report. We'll roll right into recommendations for classified personnel.
Before you do, Mr. Christian.
Yes.
I should have asked you this sooner, but I was driving in today and it occurred to me to ask. At some point, we put together something to talk about public use of the track for walking and things like that, what the guidelines are and the timelines and things like that. I'm sure people are going to want to know.
I think Damon has those.
Probably.
We have some signage up already that Mommy Babe gave us, but certainly we can make those more public.
Things like footwear and all that. I mean, now
Mhm.
we want to take good care of it while we have it.
I have 2 things too before you continue. One is, do we still have vacancies in custodial and bus drivers
Yes,
and cafeteria?
yes.
Okay, so I just want to mention, If anyone's interested in cafeteria work, bus drivers or custodial, there are positions available. You can see any one of us or see Mr. Crispin and we can point you in the right direction. Actually came in and worked the cafeteria one day last week, volunteer, and it was quite a nice thing in high school. So they put me on fruit, they put me on easy duty, so I just had to hand out fruit and veggies, so that's fun. And the second thing is I wanted to thank the athletic boosters and the teachers for working the game. Friday night, I saw the lines were long. I'm sure they did well, but it takes a lot of volunteers to get that concession stand staffed, and I'm sure you were busy the entire night. So thank you very much to the BEA or the teachers who worked. So go ahead, Mr. Christie.
I had a comment in regards to enrollment as well, real quick, just to bring us back in time. But when we were looking at the OFCC and they were doing their assessment of what our enrollment was going to be for our K-5 building, their assessment said that our enrollment numbers would be 872 students for the 2029 to the 2030 school year.
Yeah.
Oops.
And so current BES enrollment is 915. So well exceeded. We did take a lot of extra funding from PI to move over to try and expand to a 1,000 student. Back when Julie was on the board, looking at some of our predictive analysis, we're looking at 1,050 to 1,100 for this school year. So we're a little under that, but blew the OFCC out of the water with what their projected numbers were. So extremely excited that we don't lose track of the point that OFCC agreed. When we convert from the ELP part where we fund everything ahead of it, when we were to flip over to OFCC, that we would get a new assessment of what our student enrollment numbers are and their new projections. And so this is just the earmark kind of where we're at. So we can say that you weren't even close, number one. And number two is hopefully we'll get even more of the funding back of their 80% share once they recognize our space and the extra millions we put into this project. So that's a great point.
Well, and Jacob, we're following up with in the core meeting, both to check on the capacity being wrong. And we're also checking for construction costs because we were funded at 2019 levels, which we all know where that we may not get extra, but the time to ask is now and say, hey, look at what construction costs and see if they can bump that percentage up. They may tell us no, but we are pursuing it with the appropriate people on the core building team.
Right. And we're not even halfway through the year. So there's an expectation that we'll still grow and potentially hit 1,000 by the end of the school year. So in the elementary, just thought I'd bring that back up so that we would all not lose sight of that, that we are to get another assessment. So before we switch over into the big program for that master's facilities plan.
Thank you, Mr. King. Going on to recommendations, classified personnel, we got a slew of them here. And what we've, with the additional verbiage for and nomenclature, just trying to be transparent with what we're hiring folks at, the length of their day, as well as their contracts. The MP is what we started that a few months ago, just to indicate which hires are for newly created positions. So MP is for new positions, and most of those were to accommodate growth. Also, you'll see some of the recommendations have effective dates and some do not. The reason for that is effective dates are folks that we're able to get their paperwork, their BCI, FBI, licensure before the next board meeting and hire them. Tina and I both have the ability to do that. So once we approve, we go back and we start paying from that date. If they don't have a date, that means we're hiring them, but we don't have all their paperwork yet. And so some folks may ask, well, why you hire folks or recommend folks that don't have that paperwork? Well, trying to put dibs on folks and get them on record. So once they get their paperwork, we can put them in place and begin their employment. But folks are job shopping and, you know, we want to put our offer out there and get them approved. So, any questions about
Is the
That
process from the
format.
state taking longer, or is it just depends?
for BCI, FBI? We've had some coding and mistakes on some applications where they circle where to send to. We had one go to ODE. The applicants circled that instead of putting down the. So that's one.
So generally, no, it just takes, but it's just a couple weeks.
Yep.
Thank you.
Do you guys want us to ask questions now or wait till
This,
it's on the agenda? I mean, it's, you know, on the consent. Just go
if
ahead.
it's this section, it's a big section, so
Go ahead. Okay.
entirely up
Make
to the
sure.
board.
Thank you. So I wondered on these, much like the next section, it says for which calendar year this is for. Are these one-year contracts? Because it doesn't necessarily say that in the,
These are 1 year for this school year.
okay, because it does not say that on there. So
Gotcha.
like the next section says for school year 2023, 24.
Mhm.
So I was unsure.
Yeah,
So-
thank you for that.
And so another question I had was halfway down, Melissa Reynolds, the substitute nurse. I'm not sure how, can you share how you arrived at that amount and there's no other additional information?
Yeah, we didn't create a separate section for that, but that's the rate she was approved at last year. And she's just a sub. We put we have our certified subs approved. Eventually, we'd like to get to a point where we approve our classified subs as well, but we just wanted to, again, just a matter of transparency, putting that on there and knowing that we have Melissa Reynolds as a substitute nurse. Again, I think she's done that for.
She used to be a full-time nurse here, or part-time nurse, sorry, she had a job nutrition one. So I'd imagine that's probably worth the time out of it too to get it that stuff.
And another, I wanted to know, when I looked last Thursday prior to our work session, ahead for tonight's meeting, there were several resumes. And I did go through all of those that were listed. So now all those are gone. And then there's additional people that have been added. So is there any reason why those resumes came off? Or applications? Most of those were the applications, I would say.
I'm seeing one missing, you know, which, or they're all down there.
Probably the substitute nurse.
Yep,
Take her out of the count.
but yeah, they're all still there now. No executive content, maybe you just didn't scroll down far enough. I don't know.
No, I saw everything else, but I didn't see those, so,
Well,
okay.
when I was looking at the latest agenda today, one person missing
Okay.
who was on the previous one. So I don't know what.
Yeah, it's just hard to keep track, that's all. And then there is a lot of information here. And I just wish that we would have taken more time at our work session. I know there was a different focus on that day, but to go through some of these would have been very helpful. That was one thing that would have helped for tonight, I believe. And then I was wondering, Is Mr. Fugate then, as far as the assistant transportation supervisor, he's not going to be in that position any longer then?
He's still the supervisor. Yeah,
So so this is the assistant.
correct.
Okay, he's not going to lose any particular pieces of that job
He's
with
still
her.
the,
gaining
he's still
more
the
hours.
supervisor. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
So, Miss Mihailovich, we don't have her resume, and that's the missing one, 13 never done. So she's a current employee,
Yeah, she's been. here a
Yeah,
while.
yeah.
I understand.
but everything else is there.
I didn't see him today, so I saw him the other day, but I didn't see him today, but, okay. And then, last thing, is it hours per week? Or what are the hours per week that makes an employee, eligible for the benefits then?
Well, according to ACA, it's 30. You have to average 30 hours or more per week. Now, the board did pass a policy that says that if you work at least 20, you can elect to take insurance. Of course, you're going to pay a higher percentage of that than, for 20 hours or more. But the ACA requires if they work more than 30 hours, then we have to offer them health insurance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just wanted to double check that.
Mhm.
Thanks. That's all I have for that.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. Go ahead, Mr. Cooper.
Thanks.
Well, just while we're on the topic, I mean, I just wanted to say, like, whenever we say things like, are there additions to the agenda and are there whatever, we had agreed, I thought, that when we were at a work session, if we wanted to talk about things like this that were on the agenda, we all had access to this agenda in advance. And we can always bring those things up at that time and add to the agenda to discuss. So I didn't have questions, so I didn't do that. Like, if you had questions, we totally could have talked about it, and I wish you would have, because that would have been perfect. So anytime to say, hey, for Monday, can we talk about this and this? We'll totally add it to the agenda. That's cool. Do that anytime. That's the point. Okay. I don't want you to feel like you can't. That's the thing. Like, we're not going to be like, no, it's okay. We'll just add to the agenda. Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And sometimes, I'll be honest, I've lost track of when we were having the work sessions because it's listed that every month we're having one, when I know we're not, because we revised the schedule in June. So I will be honest that on Tuesday, when Shelley sent out the message, I had lost track that we were having a work session on Thursday. So I was trying to work my way through the agendas because it was unclear. So if anything, it was something I was going to bring up in the old business about work sessions, if we're really slated to have one in October, November, and December, as they are listed on our website.
Okay. Item B, employ classified staff, renew. These are Rebecca Shuck and Bob Shadowin's driver and teacher's aide. Classified salary schedule, did some formatting changes and then which included a swap, which I've explained there. Where we started, what we've been trying to do in the realm of HR is really get everything labeled the way it's labeled in the job description book that this district purchased a few years ago. And so, jobs like assistant supervisor, I think it was maintenance and ground, that job description doesn't exist in that book. And so I'm just asking the board to get everything lined up with the name that's in, with the job descriptions that we send out. The other thing is we've added the far left column, which again, back to that binder, it has departments, if you will, and where those positions fall under. And so again, just trying to communicate and use, resource that we use when we recruit folks to get it lined up. So the green highlights.
Sorry.
So we have the classroom. We have an aide, building aide position, and actually it's just an aide. But in it has descriptions of all. I mean, it can include just about anything. So just trying to provide some additional layer of transparency in what these aides are going to be doing. Also, we added the ESL or ELSS aides, and we approved that pay schedule. I think last month. I believe it was.
Yes.
Anyways, again, that falls under that classroom aid job description, but it's different somehow, and we're paying it different. So that's why the name changes there in the green. The flip-flop, when we looked at that, it was the supervisor position was making less than the straight building and grounds position. And so that didn't make sense. So for no other reason, we just thought the supervisor position needed to make more than what I think is just a plain building and grounds worker position. And then in the yellow is the only addition, and that's the assistant transportation supervisor pay schedule that this board, I think we approved the job description back in December. So a little late on this, but we're ready to make that move this evening. So those are the changes there in C for the classified salary schedule. We have in item D, we have student workers and substitutes. The green there, we went ahead again, just trying to be on the same page, be transparent with what we pay these folks. That is there. The advancement on the salary schedule, yes, we did already hire, I believe, 2 of our our English learning support specialists. I just call them support specialists. But now that we have a salary schedule, they all worked last year, and we're moving them up a step. The salary adjustment in F for Rhonda is that was a typing error. We passed her, we approved her as a secretary, but we had the aide salary step and amount there. So changing that. G, I already mentioned, those folks took positions in other districts, and 2 resignations, classified resignations, Carrie Hahn and Derek Swing. That is the long list of classified personnel recommendations.
May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda for classified personnel?
No.
Thank you, Mrs. Mansfield. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. Discussion. Additional discussion.
I have something, thank you. For item F, I was curious to know, because the resume was already, I didn't see the resume, so I was struggling because I couldn't match up the steps. And we don't extrapolate between step 10 and step 15. So the salary goes back to the step 10, and then I just wanted to clarify that that's correct understanding.
That is correct, and Ms. Smith has been an employee with us. So like Ms. Mihailovich, we did not attach her resume or application.
I'm just suggesting it would be helpful to know that this is in alignment, but it's okay. I just for consistency. Thank you. And then on item E, I just wondered how was the difference determined that somebody would be not to exceed 30 hours and somebody would work 7.5 hours per day. Was that?
So the set that is covering both the middle school and high school. The other two are handling the elementary. And that's where our
And-
largest EL population is at the elementary.
And so are you suggesting that the other two are doing elementary then?
Correct.
Okay. And again, these are just for the one school year then as well?
Correct.
Any other questions? Hang on. And again, in case I missed it, I just want to ask for the resignations in H. Did you have resignation letters attached that maybe I didn't, were they on there that I?
Yes.
Okay, it's always nice to see. Thank you. For some reason. board
You may
docs-
not have been logged in. If you weren't logged in, that's probably why you didn't see the executive content.
Perhaps, but I mean, I started that way, maybe over time it logged me out, but thanks, I just wanted to confirm that, because it is nice to know,
Those communications are
the
important.
details, some of the details. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. Mrs. Hagan, we will.
Miss-
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
And Julie asked a question concerning rescinding contracts. Could you go to that, please? G. These are people that were hired.
Yes, we had already approved them. Yes.
Right, and they never started.
They're not gonna get
They
paid.
left.
No, they
They
never
found
started.
something else.
Mhm.
All right.
So
And
instead of
also-
issuing them a contract and then having them resign, we're just having the board rescind their contract.
Correct.
It's actually more transparent than
Right.
not doing it that
And
way.
then letter
so.
H. Mr. Swangen, is that how you say that?
Fine.
I believe last month we increased
We
his
gave him a
steps.
pay raise.
So now he's
He got a considerable.
got a better.
Yep.
Found something
increase.
better.
Somewhere else.
Right.
Yep. Sadly.
Thank you.
Now.
Now, okay, Mr. Elam,
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue,
No,
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian.
Yes, the motion passes 4-1.
Okay, going on to recommendations for certified personnel. My recommendation for Savinch Abasova to be our BHS ELL teacher. This is actually a long-term sub assignment. If you remember, we had actually hired somebody, approved them, and then they ghosted us, and that was another rescinded contract that we had to do. Item B is a memorandum of understanding that I'm asking the board to enter in with BEA to add a assistant coach for golf. Our numbers have more than doubled. And we've had a volunteer, but with those kind of numbers, we really need an assistant coach. So appreciate Tracy and Aaron's assistance with that. And item C, supplemental contract, then would be a recommendation for Mr. Vesco, be our assistant golf coach, and Mr. Goulet then to be able to do home instruction services. Then lastly is our August certificated substitute list. Those are the certified personnel recommendations for September.
Thank you, Mr. Crispin. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda for certified personnel?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. King. May I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Elam. Discussion.
this one. Just one question. So did Mr. Besco participate in golf the whole season? Then as the new members came on, so this will be like back, we're approving this so he can get the back pay that he has earned already.
He'll get the supplemental.
Yes.
Yeah, he's been with them from the very beginning, like the end of July is when golf started.
Okay, good, because I know basically golf ends pretty much now.
Yes.
And after 6 seasons of my involvement, I know the numbers, I went back and double checked, they went from like 9 to about 12 members, so.
Yeah, our numbers stayed strong enough that we were able to have just an entirely different schedule for that group, which is nice. We want kids to be involved.
Like a junior varsity or. Yeah,
Correct, yeah.
which is good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Mrs. Hageman, will you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian,
Yes.
Mr. Elam.
Yes.
Okay, recommendations for business. Three things here, donations to the girls soccer program and to the cheer program. The Frank family and Bethel Athletic Boosters. Our approval of the Heritage Propane contract.
I guess that one's mine. Every year we put this out to bid with the little group of districts. We only have one propane provider come back, which was Heritage. And the negotiated agreement here or what we agreed to is 1.139 per gallon for 210,000 gallons. So anything above that will cost us whatever the market price is. But this is 31 cents, pretty much less than what we paid this year. So it was $1.449. So we're 31 cents less a gallon, which is a big deal. So we're gonna keep an eye on it. What Mr. Bird and I discussed, we're gonna see if we can keep it under 210,000 gallons so we can, keep that pricing in place. So just need the board's approval. Because if we do use all of the 210,000, that's gonna be 239,000 and some change. So just need your approval on that contract, please.
Is this about double what we bought last year?
Yeah, we had 162.5 last year, I think was the number of gallons we negotiated in our contract. We didn't use that much. We were 108, I think. So that's always good. So using that as a guide and looking at what we've spent in the past, I think we can stay under 210. I hope so. So, but with it being the first year with the new building, we'll just have to keep a close eye on it.
And I guess this is the board item. We have a contract amendment for Mrs. Hageman's contract to give her the standard 2% raise. And she's also eligible for performance bonus. So that is what that is regarding. All right. May I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda for business items? Thank you, Mr. Elam. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. Any further discussion?
Mrs. Butler and I wish that we could have gotten that prize as well. Maybe we can gom on to that somehow.
Yes, but breather can.
At least historically, we went in with other schools. Is that what we still do? So it's kind of a purchasing
It is,
thing?
but we're like we're like the biggest one that, as far as the number of gallons. So I don't know, maybe we'll take a look and see what else is out there. But yeah, I mean, Heritage did a great offer. I'm very pleased with that. So
Just
yeah,
another like Todd Bird stroke of genius, buying that big old tank and getting us a good
might
deal.
have been,
because if we
I
get the
don't
big
know.
truck,
Oh,
because the
I
big
don't
truck
know.
I know saves them money to come with a larger delivery.
Yeah,
So we'll put his face on the side.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, get a Todd Bird.
Better his than
Right
mine.
on there.
Don't want my face on there. Yeah, so, no, I mean, yeah, I was pretty surprised, so it's a good price. So we just want to stay under that 210 because we don't know what propane's gonna cost later on. So if we can do our best to do that, but we also don't know how cold it's gonna be this winter, so fingers crossed, so.
I'm sure that thoughts have been given to shutting down parts of the old building already to
Yeah.
conserve and so forth.
Thoughts?
It's a little more difficult in this building, but in the new building, we've got wings we can shut down.
The old building.
Yeah.
It's,
He, I just wanted, I
Yeah.
didn't know if it was or not.
Yeah, it's a little harder in our office. But it's okay.
Well, you don't want frozen pipes.
No.
No,
You don't
no.
turn it all the way.
Mary?
Can you call, we have a motion and second, right? So will you call the roll, please?
Sure. Mrs. Mansfield?
No.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Ely?
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer, you're up for the BEA update.
All right, let's make this fast. Brown's game starts soon. Julie's got her lunch shoes on. She's ready.
Bangles, baby.
Okay, let's talk about. In all seriousness, I'm seriously 15. I gotta. I can't believe it's homecoming already. What the? We're starting to settle in. I miss my elementary friends, haven't seeing them walk by. I want to tip off my hat to the athletic boosters. That concession stand was built like in a day. And Friday's game was fun. I worked my butt off, but it was fun working with those people, and they didn't bat an eye, like, oh, we have a new building? Okay, no problem. I would gladly do it again. It was fun. Always fun meeting Covington.
Yes.
Always is. So the athletic boosters really work hard for our children. They really do. So thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Brewer. Facility committee, do we have any updates for that, Mr. Crispin?
Sure, even though we didn't have a meeting.
All right.
Seeing Natalie and Lori and the gang and, but anyways, for the public, BS is near completion. We don't have the traditional full occupancy certificate. Outstanding is an electrical fan, but we have a bypass and we're allowed to be in the building and we have lights and air conditioning and everything works. Just we need that panel. Theater curtains, we're still waiting on our theater curtains to come in. The framework is all there and the mechanisms to move curtains, still waiting for the curtains. Bleachers for the gymnasium were delivered this morning at 7:30. They began installing this evening. It's pretty loud because we're drilling into concrete wall. So I'll be over there still working. And then just a few items. The punch list is down to about a half page right now. So we're getting close. As Lori mentioned, we don't have our weekly construction manager owner meetings anymore, but we're still going to have our core meeting. So we'll have a core meeting next month. Our own facilities committee is on break. Middle school restrooms are up and running. The renovation is great. It's bright, it's clean, and for the most part, kids are keeping them clean, which has been nice, not on wood. At some point, we'd like to talk to, we do have some leftover furniture that we did not take over to the new building. We also have a piece of playground equipment. So I don't know if the board has any interest in an auction to get rid of any of that stuff. That's what we'd have to do.
I would say auction for sure. Another thing to look at is the playground equipment. If it's still serviceable, useful and safe. Potentially partnering with the township and seeing if that would work in one of the parks to supplement what they have, if it's worth it. I don't know. If it's not, then option, but I think that would be a good gesture on our part to the township to add, because our kids are going to that park to play, so.
Plan to stop in tomorrow morning. I'll bring that up for sure.
I mean, that was just my thoughts anyways.
Yeah, I was thinking the
Great,
same thing.
Great, though.
Lastly, we have one piece of the track, spur of the track is being lengthened. So our kids aren't in the 110 hurdle race, aren't pressing off against the fence. We actually have track. So that I think is slated for October 2nd. And then that will be done. Had a meeting with Kevin Hallam from Safe Haven Defense last week. He went over to the elementary, took some measurements of all our glass entries and as well as the entries into the cafeteria. Waiting a quote from him for protective film that put over the entries, make our place more safe. And then we'll be looking at track equipment here probably in a month. That will be a sizable ticket. We're usually talking about pole vault pit, high jump pit, and hurdles and blocks, and all that good stuff.
I mean,
But,
things that we've never had. How wonderful.
Yep, good problem to have. So other than that, we need we appreciate our teachers' patience. Our custodial staff is a couple folks, and we're piecing it together as best we can. That's.
Did you want to update people on the lighting along the driveway? You said about that too.
Everybody has smartphones, so you got a flashlight. So that lighting should go in at the beginning of October. Yeah, but we are looking into some temporary lighting. It was very dark walking back there Friday, so we'll take a peek at that. We're also looking at some options of cutting down on the dust that is kicking up, especially we're gonna have another week and a half before rain. Some kind of substance to put down, or maybe even a chip and seal option. It's been a while since I've looked at that. You're surprised I know about that, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I'm just thinking when I was a
I've been
kid,
to a
we used
few
to spray
township
oil
meetings.
on top of the
That's
dirt.
right. That's right.
It's jumping out, I know,
Exactly.
but that's how they
They
did
did
it.
it on Ross Road for
Yeah.
forever until
Yeah.
they paved it a
Yeah,
couple
I
of years
remember at my
ago.
school, they would like spray the oil, and when we go to the
Put the
practice,
oil
the
on,
band,
put
the
the
practice
gravel on
field for
top.
band, we'd have to walk across it, and it was always so gross.
Yeah.
So that's
Get
just
on
like
your
what I'm
shoes.
thinking.
Yeah.
Yep. Just
That's
bring
it.
back memories, Mr. Kristen, thank you.
You're welcome.
Like a
Facilities
kid again.
Committee report. That's it.
Yeah, and I just also on that electrical panel, I want to thank the Miami County inspectors because they were really super to work with us on that. They knew, I mean,
With everything.
yes, so I want to say another shout, I know I've said
Yeah.
it probably 2 or 3 times, but positive, they were great. I cannot say enough about our Miami County inspections and inspectors. They were super to work with throughout this project. Hopefully he'll be able to sign off here sometime late September, but we'll see. Technology Committee, Mr. King.
Nothing to report.
Liaison reports, we'll start with Mrs. Mansfield with activities.
Student activities, yeah. Honestly, since my going back to school, I've been super busy. I didn't put together a big, long report. Just congratulations to all of our teams that are doing so well, kicking off their new seasons. Cross-country teams, junior high and high school level, are having great seasons with lots of people in the top 10 finishes, which are fabulous. Obviously football is doing great, cheer is doing great. What else is doing great? This is how bogged down in my teacher world I am right now. So, yeah, volleyball, yes, also fantastic volleyball. So, yeah, I'm just, that's unbelievable right now. And homecoming, thanks. Homecoming already. So go Bees on Friday, and everybody have a great time Saturday. So,
All right, Mrs. Donahue on CTC.
Yes, there are 41 juniors attending CTC this year and 45 seniors. And I just learned today that from a very excited parent who has a junior in the precision machining section, that the CTC will be opening the largest building in the state of Ohio for training of machining next year. So they're very excited about that. So good news for any of our students that want to go forward and learn in that program. And many others.
Yes.
I think so.
Yes.
No, I think Mr. Crispin didn't say anything about graduation. CTC and that's what.
Old business.
Okay.
Thanks.
And I guess we're out of order, Mr. Elon.
Our people in Columbus have just gotten back from vacation, so there are just some things and some amendments being added, so. Nothing's, nothing really there to tell you about.
Okay. All right, I guess we're up to old business, so.
Awesome. Okay, great.
There's your intro.
So, yeah, so what's going on with graduation? Well, the CTC approved their calendar February 14th, 2023. That calendar is still out there. Does not have their senior recognition program on it. We passed ours the following week, 21st, and we had our graduation on there. At some point, they landed the spot at UD, and ironically, they were closed out at Wright State because of a double conflict. So they had that didn't get communicated out. Ourselves and one other district, Preble Shawnee, had the same conflict. May 17th, 2024, senior recognition for the Career Center and graduation for our high schools. So we are going to go ahead and move our graduation to Sunday. Not our first choice. We know folks have graduation parties planned, but it'll probably be 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the evening. It'll still be back at Hobart. Folks were pretty set on wanting to have it back there, and I get it. It's a great venue. So that information will get formally communicated out by principals at the end of the week. What happened there? And then finally, just want to remind folks that they are welcome to call the superintendent's office, email the superintendent. Any questions about things that are happening in the district? And if I know about it, I'll share what I know. And if I don't, we'll look it up and I'll get back with it. But I want folks to be as informed as we want to be. That's it for old business.
Thank you for looking into that and for finding a way to move that graduation, because obviously my own kid was affected, although he still says, I'm not going to any of that stuff. So, you know, he's not going to ours, he's not going to theirs, according to him. So we'll see, but who knows? Who knows? Maybe I'll change his mind.
Changes.
But for all the other 44 other graduates, thank you on behalf of their families.
Just have a couple follow-ups from the whole report back to facility. Both of my daughters report that the middle school bathrooms are awesome. So, man, we went to the new bathroom. It's so nice. So there's that. Just wanted to also say thank you for a great opening of the new stadium for football. I thought that was a great program. It was nice to see a lot of our donors there as well, so they could recognize them for establishing the legacy throughout the remaining years of our stadium. So I thought that was just very nice and appreciate all the accommodations.
Pass it on. Thank you.
Just a question, just wondered if you have any update on how the new morning and care is going at the elementary with the YMCA and.
I do not, but I'll get one for you.
And I was wondering, do you have an update also, please, then? I know early on when this was discussed, there was the hope that some of those young ladies or young men would want to stay and become cafeteria workers and help out over there. Do you know if any of that has been picked up on anybody that we've hired, part of that group that you?
I don't believe there's anybody on that, on what we approved tonight. That's from the YMCA staff. I don't think they would be, because that's part of the rent-free deal, is that they leave their personnel there, or they come in and work for us. So, but I will get something out to the board, and then we can share it out at the next meeting. But yeah, I haven't really looked into that. The other things.
And just wondered, the status of Likewise?
Yeah, great.
Please.
Great segue. So we had another meeting with the Mrs. Hogan, Miss Jones, and Likewise personnel, Mr. Fugate, and we're getting closer. I think they're still working on, I think that meeting was last week. There were about 30 kids that had showed interest, and so our goal is to start Q2. And we have our lawyers looking at the lease agreement for using one of our buses. We do have a couple bus drivers that stepped up and said they're interested in picking up some extra hours. So we're getting there. So at this point, I'm out of it, and it'll be Miss Hogan or Mrs. Hogan, Miss Jones, meeting with Likewise folks and creating a schedule. So I think they're going to do one more push to get some more kids, but then start setting up the, I think Miss Jones was going to take the class lists, find out their library times, and start helping Likewise figure out what that schedule is going to look like for getting students over there and experiencing those leadership lessons.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Appreciate that. Nice update. And then my last thing, I just wondered, do we have a scheduled work session for October, please? Based on the new June plan that we approved.
Next work session, November 16th.
Thank you. Just figured it's good for everybody to know.
I have one more thing before we close out old business. I'd like to take a few moments to remember the Clark family in Eden Park. So if we could observe a moment of silence for the family and children. Thank you. We have no further public participation, to my knowledge. Do we need an executive session? Yes, Mrs. Reese.
If you would permit me to, I was just gonna add a couple comments on the numbers, if you guys are interested. Nothing.
The floor is yours, Mrs. Reese.
So, as Jacob mentioned, I follow these numbers and the rest of you know pretty closely. So I just want to clarify a couple things, because I know you probably don't remember, but the OFCC actually, when they predicted the 872, that's at the end of the 10-year period. And the way they did the estimate was they predicted that we would keep gaining students until carriage trails got completed, which would be around this time. And then there would be no more kindergartners coming. And then the next year there would be no more first graders, because their idea was the kids would progress through the grades. But because construction would stop, there would be no additional students coming. So amazingly enough, this year was the peak for the elementary school, which their estimate was 911. And we're at 915, so pretty close. And that was just based on sheer numbers of carriage trails being built.
And then it went down over the years to 872 because no new students would be coming. So that's the part we know is not going to happen, even though right now annexation is on hold. And just so you know, the other peaks, middle school would have been school year 27-28 at 655 students. And 9 through 12, their peak was the last year at 839 students. So again, I mean, he's right. Still need to redo the estimate because annexation is going to come back in January. I mean, at least our commissioners have managed to delay it a couple of years, which kind of bought us some time. But just a reminder that you're right, it was 872, but that was at the end of the 10 years when they said there would be no more kids coming.
Peak.
Yeah.
one. So I was just looking at what they were saying at the end.
Yep.
Thank you. Other than that, just to say they're wrong.
They're wrong.
They've been wrong. Consistently wrong.
Do we need an executive session this evening? We do not need an executive session. We have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. McKay.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Elam, for the second. Any discussion? Mrs. Hageman, call the roll, please.
Mrs. Sebastian.
Yes.
Mr. Elam.
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue.
Yeah.
Mr. King.
Yep.
We have 8:11. Tracy has 4 minutes to spare.
Those Steelers, will you?
Get out of here before the game.